Hey guys, I've been working on this deck for a while now, and I wanted to share my thoughts with you guys. I have a deck list right here that I'm going to show you guys, and then I'm going to go over my choices, and I'm going to go over some combos as well. This is part one of a series about this deck list and how to play, and everything you need to know about this deck. I'll make a part two once more information is released, once the following support is released. We're still waiting on stuff from future sets. So before that, I wanted to mention I have a spreadsheet that I'm continually updating. The link to that will be in the description, and you'll have access to all of my combos, deck lists, and I'll have information on other versions of the deck as well, including pure versions and other off-meta versions, as well as versions for Genesis and for Master Duel, once those are also more in line. So right now, without further ado, let's go over my combos and let's go over the ratios. Okay, so we'll start with 3 Kewl Synchro. This is the Rhoda for the deck. It searches whatever card you need, and then it lets you perform a Synchro Summon. You have to play 3 because you're allowed to use 2 per turn, which is why you really need 3. You can't go without 3. Since you can activate 2 per turn, you would rather see more than 1 in your hand. And it's a quick play, so it's pretty useful both going first and, as your combo starter and as an interruption on the following turn. Next, we have 3 copies of Kewl. This is your 1 card starter. It does tuner lock you, but it summons any tuner from the deck or from graveyard. So you need 3. This is important for your starters. Next, we have 3 copies of Kewl Reko. This is also a 3 of. Some lists have worked on 2. I think 3 is very important because right now in the current state of the deck, we don't have enough ways to shuffle things back into the deck. And since Kewl Synchro requires you to search a Kewl card, and because the field spell requires you to summon one from the deck, you would need as many copies as possible in the deck for a better run game. So that's why we're playing 3, and for the same reason, we're also playing 3 mix. I think if you are post side, you can side out 1 copy of Mix or 1 copy of Reko depending on the matchup. But I would personally have it in the main, maximum copies for both Mix and Reko and Q. Now here's the controversial part. I'm only playing 1 clip. I know you guys are thinking, but isn't clip your turn 0 starter that lets you 5 mana? The problem is, clip only works as a turn 0 combo if you use clip and either a level 2 or ideally Reko or Mix. With Mix, you get a pop. If you use any other level 2, you only get a search, which isn't useless, but only getting the search from track is not enough as an interruption. Because now I am, especially game 1, I'd be broadcasting, hey, I'm playing this deck. Whereas if I hide the Q effect, the clip effect, then they don't know necessarily what deck I'm playing, especially game 1 going second. So which is why turn 0 is not as big of a deal as you think. Turn 0, if you can use clip plus Reko, and then you can level floodgate them by making red seal, that's huge. But because Reko, even at 3 copies, you're not guaranteed to see Reko every game with clip. I don't think turn 0 is the play right now. And since you only have 2 synchro options you can make, which are, Trackmaker and Red Seal, it's really not worth it to try for turn 0. 2 copies of clip is probably ideal, but I'm playing 1 because I don't want to brick on clip, in the sense that, I don't want to open clip and nothing else and then be stuck. I had a game earlier today where that ended up being the case. Having 1 clip in the deck means when you're going first, you can search it through Reko, and when you're going second, you'd rather see, instead of a clip and nothing else to do a combo, I'd rather see other hand traps that actually do something. That's why I'm playing 1. This is controversial. You could probably play 2, but I'm leaning to 1 until we get more support that justifies running 2. Next, we have Red Nova, the honorary Kewl member. You have to play it. It turns normal summon Q, summon Red Nova, and then you get your combo off to the races because it's an extender, it's a tuner. Let's put those aside. Now we have the field spell. Again, same logic. Field spell is very good. Field Spell plus any tuner is combo, but you can only you can only control one Field Spell. So having a second Field Spell in your hand is really bad. And then going second, the Field Spell is not a hand trap, it's not an interruption, it's not a monster. So there are instances where the Field Spell is not necessarily helpful, especially if you're trying to go into a board that has lots of pops. Like, for example, something like Zodiac, Trident, or Rise of the Detonator. Activating a Field Spell is really bad into decks like that. That's why I'm only on one. I think if you're playing a different format like Genesis, or if you're trying to play the deck in general and you have space, a second one is pretty good. But for my purposes, I'm only going to run one. And then now we have Synchro Overtake, the 4 copies of Synchro Overtake. We have 3 copies of Overtake and 1 copy of Genesis. Of course, Genesis is worse because you have to have a tuner in your field or grave, but because we're playing so many hand traps, you're going to have that. And it also lets you search the quick play spell, which is why this is pretty useful. Since you can use, if you open Genesis and you also have combo, you can search the JJ with Trackmaker, and then you can use Genesis to search a copy of the Cool Tone Synchro. Of course, you can also search Overtake, and Overtake is pretty good. It's basically like another 1-card starter combo. I have lines for Overtake in the spreadsheet as well, so you guys can take a look at that. So yeah, this is, and then our last engine piece, honorary engine piece. This deck, because we don't have a lot of options in our extra deck that we need, it's pretty flexible. So having one of these is a pretty nice tool, especially post side. You can banish whatever 6 cards you want from your extra deck that you don't think you'll need, and then you could dig 6 cards in, find whatever you need, especially like post side tools, as well as starters or hand traps, whatever you need. So pot is really good for that. I would ideally run in the side deck, but the side deck's pretty tight, and it's not useless going first anyways, since it's basically a functional starter. So that's also another honorary card. Next, let's go into the non-engine. Okay, we got 3 copies of Mulcharmy. It's not a tuner, which is unfortunate, but Fuwa lets you draw whatever hand traps you need, and it's also really good with the clip line, where like if I have clip and I have Fuwa, if I Fuwa, I can draw into the Reco and then I can use clip. So yeah, Fuwa lets you enable turn 0 more, or at least you can draw more hand traps, which is very important. The next hand trap is 3 Ash Blossom. What are you doing? If you don't have 3 Ash Blossom, you're really not playing the deck. Ash Blossom is like the best hand trap, one of the best hand traps in the format in general, because it stops Mulcharmies. Though you actually don't have to stop Mulcharmies in this deck. I'll go over some lines where you don't worry about Mulcharmy at all. But Ash Blossom is really good because it's a level 3 tuner. What that means is, well, it's a tuner, so it works with the deck in general. And 2, because it's level 3, Mix plus Ash can make Remix. And you can also get it back with Remix because it's a tuner. For the same reason, we're playing Bell. Another level 3 tuner, very good in general. The next tuner hand trap we have is Effect Failure. Effect Failure is not the strongest hand trap in the format in general, but right now with Dracotail being pretty big, you can target Arthalion and negate Arthalion, which doesn't matter even if they chain block. The other thing with Effect Failure is that it's not once per turn. So if you have a Remix, you can technically use Effect Failure and use Remix to get Effect Failure back, which means, it's pretty useful in that sense too. And then being a level 1 means if your Q was negated, or if you have Reco, you can use this in your hand as combo. That's why you need to play Effect Failure. Next we have the Cyframe package. These are level 2 tuners, so that's why they're pretty good. Going second, they're really good, because Cyframe can negate any spell effect, so this is really good into Mitsurugi, and Gamma can negate monster effects, so good in general. Of course, Gamma is kind of weird to as a one-of, but it is limited, so it is what we do. Post side, since if you're going first, most likely you'll have a monster in the field, so trying to resolve these guys can be a bit difficult. That's why deltas, you can definitely side them out, since you will have monsters in the field, and trying to negate spells is going to be a bit difficult because there aren't that many spells that can really be activated on your turn, turn 0. Gamma, there is an argument that you want to keep Gamma and Driver because you can negate Fuwa losses or Ash Blossoms and stuff like that. But overall, I don't think it's worth running like, you know, one brick for one hand trap that's only like, you know, online for like the first action of your turn. That's why post side usually slide these out, and I'll go over more of sliding patterns in a bit. Okay. Now we have our spicy tech cards. I know most of you will understand why I'm running these, but these two are a bit special. First of all, if you haven't noticed, Ecclesia is a tuner, and Fallen of Albaz lets me fusion stuff from, you know, their board. This package is pretty nice. You know, Fallen Virtuous it's a breaker, but it's also good at dodging effects of, you know, my own stuff, as well as, you know, it recurs itself because of the way how Fallen works. So yeah, this is a 5-card package. Yes, I am adding 2 bricks because of these two, but I'll go over why they aren't bricks in a bit. Okay, now let's go into the extra deck, shall we? We're gonna play the Honorary SP Little Knight. Earlier today, I had a incident where I needed Almirage to pair with SP, but this deck the extra deck can get a little tight because of my variant. Okay, so here we have 2 copies of Trackmaker, 2 copies of Remix, 2 copies of RS, and 2 copies of Loudness War. You really can't run less than 2 of each because we don't have, well, we do have ways to grind them out, but we do end up needing a lot of them. And so that's why I'm running 2 of each. You can cut the Loudness War down to 1. It is possible. I don't recommend it. I recommend having 2. And then RS, you definitely need at least 2. And Remix, it's nice to have 2. Same with Trackmaker, you need at least 2. You would run more ideally, but for the sake of my extra deck, I needed more space. And this is what I came up with. This is enough to get you grinded a little bit, but not too much. And the idea is that you either win by then, or you know you can't really win by then. Then we have, for the tech choice, we have one Sylvia. I'll go over why she comes in, but she is hard to summon, but there are ways to make her in this deck. One of them is if your Albaz never resolved, he is a level 4 and Clip is a level 2, and she is a tuner synchro, so you can make her that way. That is one of the ways. But the other thing is, you know, it's nice to have a backup option. One of the first things I will probably be cutting is, I might be cutting her for Zarin, so this is kind of a placeholder slot for that until Zarin comes out. That's in Burst Protocol, and I'll talk more about him in the second video, in part 2, because, you know, he's not legal right now. But for now, this is the next slot. And finally, we have the branded package. As you saw with the Albaz and the Ecclesia, we are running a bigger package here. If you don't want to run the full package with these 2 guys, you would just run these 2. And what that does is, when you use the first Fallen, you can send, you know, so let's say you're going on your turn and you use Fallen. You can send the Albion, and then in the end phase, you can set another copy, and then that second copy, you'd activate it, you send Dogma, and Dogma lets you add a 3rd copy to your hand, and you can use that copy again. But you would need, you know, something else in your extra deck to send. So if you have three cards in your extra deck, you can cycle through 3 of these pretty easily. That's why you want, you know, at least 3. The reason I'm running 5 is because, well, if I'm running 3, I might as well run like 2 more. And what these do is, Titanclad, I can go Fallen and Virtuous and then end phase Titanclad to summon Albaz and fuse them off, and then using, you know, one of these 2 into Mirror Jade, and that gives me some sort of interruption even if I have no starters at all, only hand traps. I can still get some sort of extension that way. And then obviously Lubellion and Albion are the ones that you want to make with Albaz, so that you can make Mirror Jade, or you can go Mirror Jade directly using Albaz. And then here's why Ecclesia comes in, is because Q can summon Ecclesia is a tuner, and Ecclesia can summon Albaz, and Albaz can summon, you know, one of your monsters from your extra deck. So that's the main and the extra deck. Let's get into the side deck. I'm not going to spend too much time explaining the side deck because side decks do kind of matter based on the format. And in this format, with Mitsuyami and like all these other drollable decks, you can't not play Droll. Drolls should be in the main ideally, but this is one of those decks where you want tuner hand traps more than non-tuner hand traps. So I feel like siding this in the matchups where it matters is probably better. And also that way it doesn't conflict with Fuwa as well. So that's one of the reasons why I'm siding instead of maining it. Next we have 3 Retaliating Sea, so that we can counter Draco Tail. Another benefit of Retaliating Sea is that being a level 4 non-tuner, you can summon, let's say I have Retaliating Sea and my opponent targets it to like get rid of it, or like to negate it or something. I can chain clip to, synchro off the Retaliating Sea, because if they're gonna get rid of it anyways, I can try to get more value out of it and summon that to Silvera, and then I can book their field. So being level 4 and then having that clip, that can come in handy into the Silveria, especially because on my turn, say once there is a Retaliating Sea on the field, one of the problems with the Retaliating Sea is that because my own tuners would be banished when sent to the graveyard, they won't trigger their effects. So having a level 6 tuner synchro that I can make using Retaliating Sea, that is pretty nice because it helps clear out the Retaliating Sea without having to play into the locks. For example, Overtake locks me to synchro monsters. So I can Overtake, summon Mix, and then synchro off Retaliating Sea and Mix, and then book their field and pop a monster. And that's just one of the reasons why I'm running Sylvia in the extra deck. Next one's Ghost Ogre. She's really good this format, and like you could main her, but I'm already over 40, and I don't want to be even more over 40. Also, Ghost Ogre is kind of situational. It's good in some matchups, but not all matchups. So I feel like post side, especially like when I'm going first, I might side in the Ghost Ogres, because sometimes I have too many things that I want to side out, and then I don't have enough things to side in, so I can side in more hand traps that work either way. Next, you have Call By. This is really just for going first. You can call by Ash Blossom or a Fuwa Loss or a Droll, because Droll does kind of sting in this deck. So it's good in general, but you don't want it going second because you can't really use it going second. Against most decks, you can use it going first, which is why I side it. Here's a new spicy tech card that I'm experimenting with. It did actually help a lot today. Spell card Monster Reborn. It's basically a quick effect. Summon one of their monsters or your monsters, and then you can't attack with it. Can't use its effects. That's fine. What this does is that if you're going first, or even if you're going second, if you normal summon one of your monsters, you search, but then the monster gets popped, you can't synchro summon because you don't have a monster in the field to use a monster in the hand from. What Spellcard Monster Reborn does is that it lets you revive one of your Cool Twin monsters, and then now because you have it, you can use a tuner in your hand to synchro summon. So this is really good as an extension. It works in the sense like Yummy Surprise does, but of course we don't have a Yummy Surprise for the deck. It's also good because you can summon a level 4 from their deck, from their graveyard, and then use the clip in your hand and make a Sylvia and then book their field. So it has a few uses, and I'll go over this more when I'm going over the Genesis version guide, which will come out eventually. But this is very useful there. I'm working on certain lines where I can steal various levels and then have different targets with Q and Hopier to make using Spell card Monster Reborn. The final 3 is Gravity Collapse. It's a very good floodgate. Why am I running this over Mini-Game Reframing? Good question. Because I don't have enough space in the extra deck for Visas or Mutara. There's really no difference between this and Reframing, other than this is also like a floodgate versus Reframing is just a negate. And so this is way more powerful because I can stop their first summon and then stop them entirely, and then I can do whatever I need, and then next turn I can close it out. This is also one of the reasons why I'm playing Prosperity, because if I'm playing 3 copies of this and 1 copy of Prosperity, and I have open Prosperity, I can dig for 6, search this, and my opponent knows the inevitable is going to come. Pretty easy to resolve, pretty easy in general. Yeah, so that's it for the deck. Right now I'm running 42, and are there any changes I would like to make? Yes, I would like to make it shorter, but there's not a whole lot you can cut. And because we are adding 3 bricks, going a little bit over 40 is not unideal, especially because this deck is pretty consistent mathematically speaking. In practice, it can vary. This deck is quite prone to variance sometimes. Now let's go over some of the main ideas that like matter. Now I know we mentioned that Ecclesia and Albaz are two bricks that we're adding unnecessarily in this version of the deck, but I wanted to go over some very useful situations in which they actually aren't as bricky as you think. Albaz, well, normal summon Albaz is not really an ideal game state in most cases, but Ecclesia is actually kind of funny. She has the effect where, especially going second, is if your opponent controls more monsters than you, you can special summon her. And so what happens is, when going second, I have nothing on board. My opponent doesn't know what I'm playing. I can go special summon Ecclesia, and then I can go Ecclesia effect tribute. And then here's where my opponent has to make a choice. Are they going to let me summon Albaz, or are they going to ash the Ecclesia? And if they ash the Ecclesia, that means that my starters are can't be ashed. But if they let it resolve, I summon Albaz, pitch one card, whatever, and then I can fusion off their board. And because I'm running quite the extensive package right here, I have a few targets. So we can make, Albaz plus one light monster into Albion, Albaz plus a dark monster into Libellion, Albaz plus a fusion Synchro XZ or Link monster into Mirror Jade. That's basically like a lot of their board. And Mirror Jade is another interruption on his own as well. We can also make, plus a monster with 2500 or more attack into Titanclad, or we can make Dogma if they have a light monster or dark monster and any other monster. So this can break a lot of boards in that sense, because special summon one from deck. It tests if they have Ash, then you discard one, whatever, and then attempt to fuse off their board. And if you bait out their interruptions, then all you have to do is now you just normal summon your starters and then combo, or use your other starters and combo. Do beware that where'd it go? If you do end up resolving Albaz to summon, Synchro Overtake doesn't work anymore. So that is a small confliction to concern and be aware of. But usually what'll happen is that when you try to bait them with Ecclesia, is that they will not let the Ecclesia summon, in which case you're free to use Overtake to summon, Mix or Reco, whichever you need. Most likely it'll be Mix, and I'll go over the combos with Simulator as well, because it's easier that way. Another thing that I wanted to let you guys think about is what hand traps work and what hand traps don't really work against this deck. So let's see. Okay, so the common hand traps that you would think work on this is, against Cool Twin Synchro, you would think, yes, Ash Blossom works. I agree, Ash Blossom works. Purge also works because, it's the effect that adds from deck to hand. But one of the hand traps that it seems like does work is, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but according to people I've talked to, Impulse also works against this card because the effect also includes the effect to perform a Synchro Summon, which is, effect to summon. And so that is one of the awkward hand trap interactions that can come up with this card. With Ash Blossom, you can summon from hand, deck, or grave. And that means, of course, yes, Impulse. Also Ash Blossom because you're summoning from deck, but also Bell because you're summoning from grave. And because you don't choose, it's at resolution. Yeah, all of those are still alive against it. Same thing for Reco. Since you're adding from deck or grave, you can Ash it, you can Bell it. One of the nice things about Reco and Mix, since even they both have the same weaknesses, but the thing that's nice about them is if you get drolled and you have a target in your graveyard, you can still use the effect to add from graveyard. You just can't add from deck, which is not bad because it still helps in your grind. But yeah, it is something to not forget about. And then Synchro Overtake, it summons from deck or grave, so yes, you can Bell it, you can Ash it. One of the important things about Synchro Overtake is if you do activate Synchro Overtake, you do not reveal until the resolution of the card. And so if your opponent activates Fuwa loss, you can change your target. You don't target until the resolution, and that does matter because normally the line would be you would reveal Remix and summon Mix from the deck, but under Fuwa loss, if you don't want to give them a draw, you can reveal RS and add Reco from deck to hand, and then normal summon Reco and add clip, and then pass turn. And that does matter, which is why you have to remember, Synchro Overtake does not reveal or declare anything until the resolution. And then you can reveal, and then you can either add or summon. That's all in resolution. And so yes, you can impulse it, you can purge it, you can ash it. You can also bell it. And yeah, if you're under Droll, you can Synchro Overtake, you just summon, you can't search. Yes. Field Spell. Of course, like any field spell, if it gets Ghost Ogred, doesn't resolve. The effect that tributes for cost, it tributes for cost, so there's that. And then you would summon from deck. Because both of these want to summon from deck, or search from deck, you need to make sure you have as many copies as possible in the deck. That's why I'm running maximum for the ones that are useful. But of course, post-side, you can side out some copies. Now, let's go over some siding patterns, shall we? Game 2, game 3, if I'm going second, what am I doing here? Well, first thing I'm doing is I'm looking at, these are not, I'm not looking at those. I might be looking at these. If it's a deck that has a lot of ways to pop my stuff, I might look into keeping, somewhere between 1 to 3 of these. I'm not looking for Call by the Grave. If it's a deck that dies to Ghost Ogre, then I'd be looking to side in some of these. And if it's a deck that dies to Droll, I'd be looking to side in some of these. Or if it's Draco Tail, I'd be looking to side in Retaliating Seed. White Forest is also a deck that you can side Retaliating Seed against. Now, what am I siding out? Okay, going second, I am most likely siding out 1 copy of Mix, because most of the ways I'm getting to Mix is summoning it from deck, or off of either mostly off of like the Fail Spell, or searching it off Cool Tone Synchro. So I can side out 1 copy. I'm siding out Prosperity. Depends on what else I need to side, but if I have to cut Duelist Genesis, I might cut that. See, those are fine. Effect failures. If there are hand drops that don't work in a certain matchup, I might side those out. The other one I'm siding is, depends on the matchup, but I may side out these 2. Maybe. That's pretty much it for what I can side out going second. Going first, things change a lot. So these are staying going first. I want to maximize the starters as much as possible. And what I am taking out for sure going first is I'm taking out my Cypher package. I believe I mentioned that earlier, because Delta will rarely be live, and Gamma also, other than the first activation on a Charmy, has not that much value when you're running the extra brick. So this is 5 cards you can side out, and then we have 3 Fuwa. That makes it 8 cards. If we take out, say, 1 Mix, and if we just take out this, we have 9 cards we can side out. And so going first, we can side in, let's see, so 3 spell cards, 2 Ghost Ogres, 1 Call by, 3 Collapse. Or you could side out, instead of the Ghost Ogres, you can side out some of these, and you could maybe figure out something else to side out. You can also do a thing where instead of siding out 1 Mix, you keep the Mix in, and instead of 2 Ghost Ogres, you only put in 1. And that also gives you 15 on both sides. Of course, everything is matchup dependent, and even your side deck may vary depending on what matchup you're playing, what the format's like. It will change. It's subject to change. This is a deck that I expect to see exist on the market for quite a while, because it's a fair deck in general, which is why it's probably not going to get hit to the oblivion. So it's a deck that I expect to see for some time, which is why I expected to see various formats. Especially, I expected to see changes once the new support is announced. So yes, let's move on to combos. I'll pull up a simulator and I'll go over some lines. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section below or join the Discord. I will have a Discord linked below, and as well as my spreadsheet. Feel free to support me as well on